The following presentation is a production of Ride the Wave Media.
We are those guys. We hope to be your guys, bringing you the latest from the National Football League. And of course, only if Nick wants to, we can get into a little hardwood as well, just like we had previewed on the last episode of Those Guys. I'm joined, as always, by Nick Ferguson. Nick, what's going on, my man?
Nothing much but that hat you have on. I can't say that I really appreciate you wearing the Boston Celtics hat, but listen, I get it. They won game one, and I'll just leave it there.
That's fine. I mean, they didn't have to exert much effort beyond the first quarter, but that's a bridge we can cross some other time. The series is far from over, so no need to get into it just yet, especially when I think compared to last week, Nick, we're getting a lot of our teams up close and in front of the camera for OTAs, mini camps just around the corner. So I thought it would be a good exercise for us to tap in on a couple of teams and follow some stories kind of under the frame of the best and worst quotes that we saw from these organized training associations. Hey, Nick, what does OTA stand for? I don't know.
On the field activities.
Thank you, sir. That's why he's the pro and I am just the guy with the voice. So, Nick, I'm going to start with the best quote that I saw from, what was it again?
Who was it? Was that?
On the field activities.
Yeah,
that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
We'll go to your home state and your father's team, the Miami Dolphins. We saw this a year ago from one Lamar Jackson, but now Tua Tagovailoa has dropped a considerable amount of weight. How much? He couldn't give a specific number. And when Mike McDaniel was asked about it, quote, it was a very concrete thing that we were trying to solve last year with regard to his physical preparation. And that was his ability to be available as much as he can. So clearly Tua and Lamar are two different styles of quarterback. However, they have the same end goal. They want to be on the field for as long as they possibly can. And I guess that has to do with dropping a few LBs. And I don't think we heard a single complaint this time a year ago. However, can I read you some quotes from some of those pass catchers in Miami, Nick?
Absolutely.
Tyreek Hill, quote, I ain't going to lie. When I saw Tua at the Pro Bowl, I was kind of scared. Dude was fat as F. He was fat. He was chubby. I was like, hold on, bro. Hold on. But seeing him now and where he's come from and how skinny he's gotten, and he was trying to figure out what's that stuff everybody's taking? Ozempic. So Tua, according to Tyreek, had to be on that Ozempic. Meanwhile, Jaylen Waddle added, I told him I missed chubby Tua, man. Quote, I miss chubby Tua, man. I ain't going to lie. I didn't like it when I saw him. I told him, I'm not effing with it. I told him straight up, I'm not effing with it. Eat some more or something, man. Where do we get to the bottom of this, Nick? Is this the best quote because it's ridiculous what these guys are saying? Or there's serious optimism for Miami with, what do you want to call it, Tiny Tua?
Tiny Tua. Hey, listen, two things can be true at the same time, so I'm going to say both. The fact of even implying jokingly that Tua dropped an enormous amount of weight due to, I guess, the trendy drug of choice now is Ozempic. I think that's too far-fetched. And once again, it just Tyreek Hill trying to make jokes of the situation. But I will say this. When you look at Lamar Jackson, you look at Tua and the weight that he's dropped, I know there are a lot of individuals who are against this idea because they're both quarterbacks. And you're right, both of those guys have different styles. Tua is going to move around in the pocket. Lamar is going to move around in the pocket, but he's also going to move the pocket down the field with his mobility. But I think from a health standpoint, it is great when you watch quarterbacks do this because Tua at one point was 6'1", 221 pounds. Maybe he played at that weight at Alabama. I'm not sure, but I'm sure he looked at his health and decided that, listen, I can't be the best version of myself for the Miami Dolphins if I'm carrying all of this weight. And look at the game they lost against Kansas City on the road last season in the cold weather, I might add. But this is where you're going to need flexibility and mobility to be at his best. And Tua didn't really have that. So watching him drop that weight, to me, we're going to see a more quicker, faster Tua, which is going to allow the Miami Dolphins offense that is always already like a Olympic track team become that much faster, because we know even though Tua is not Lamar Jackson, he can and he has shown that he can break tackles in an open field. So I think a lighter Tua would be a better Tua.
Now, of course, I keep mentioning Lamar Jackson because he was the MVP last season. So the sky's the limit. MVP season for Tua coming, right?
Nah.
It's 1-1.
I don't know. I don't know if we can make that 1-to-1 comparison, but it does bode well for Miami and Mike McDaniel, knowing as though Tua has dropped a couple of LBs.
Is this their division to lose, right? So we move forward looking at what this means in a greater context. With the Bills losing some key players, of course, they still have Josh Allen. With the New York Jets, of course, regaining Aaron Rodgers and a fourth team that plays in New England. Is the AFC East, in your mind, again, in June during OTAs, is that their division to lose in Miami?
You know what? I'm going to say no, because it still is the New York Jets. And until
really,
yes, I know as crazy as that sound, because when you look at each team in the division, it always comes down to who has the better quarterback. And arguably, even with Tua dropping weight and even with the track team they're having in Miami, the better team is the New York Jets, because Aaron Rodgers is going to be on a revenge tour. He took a lot of strays last season for things he said about football, and mostly the things that he didn't say that didn't have anything to do with football. But here's the thing for the Jets that the Miami Dolphins is trying to get to. What does the Miami Dolphins defense actually look like? They suffered a lot of injuries over the past 2 years, and that was going to be the catalyst for moving Mike McDaniel's offense ahead, because they're trying to duplicate the same thing they had with the 49ers. Run the ball, decent quarterback play, players outside the numbers that can make plays for you, but also a defense that can turn over the ball and put your offense on the short field. I know this for sure. Robert Saleh and that Jets defense, that's what they've been building over the past couple of years.
Right.
You get Aaron Rodgers back in the fold, you go up by 14, you force teams to abandon their run game and have to throw to stay in the game. It helps out well. And then look at Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. This was a team that everyone was talking about, and Josh Allen was this going to be the final year. Josh Allen finally got over that hurdle. But now it's almost like the Buffalo Bills added more hurdles for their quarterback to get over, because they got rid of Stephon Diggs and they have some wide receivers, but these are young, unproven wide receivers, and you still have a couple of veterans there as well. But that group is unproven. But I'm still going to go with the New York Jets winning that division, followed closely by Tua, like Tua, and the Miami Dolphins.
Well, I do enjoy the fact that the Miami Dolphins took Jordan Poyer in free agency from Buffalo. There he is in South Beach. Key, losses for Buffalo, the 4-time reigning division champs, on both sides of the football. So I may disagree that maybe it's Buffalo's to lose since they are the reigning champs. But I do like what we see out of Miami so far, even though they've had some holes on both sides of the football as well. And for a team that made it to the Super Bowl and then fell well short of that expectation, returning, let alone winning it, those Philadelphia Eagles. And here's the quote from OTAs that for me, Nick, I think I enjoyed the least. I said the worst to start the show. Maybe that's reserved for Nick Sirianni when he's, I guess, puffing his chest again, telling Giants fans that they got their best player. Remember when he was yelling in the tunnels at Arrowhead that they beat the Chiefs, and you don't hear the Chiefs fans anymore? The season went out of whack immediately after that victory. Here's the quote. This coming from Jalen Hurts. Again, we're doing our best and worst, or maybe cause for concern, coming from OTAs. Quote, "You get to a point where you feel I'm going to be comfortable with this. I like this. Then the time comes you can rep it later on. But now it's just a lot of new inventory in. The majority of it probably being 90% of it new. So it's just been a fun process because you get to see what works for other people." This is Jalen Hurts talking about the brand new offense installed by Kellen Moore. most recently seen in LA for 1 year, most recently seen before that in Dallas, where they put up some numbers, but no success for either team. So install period happens at OTAs. That makes sense. They paid both of their wide receivers. So unlike we mentioned the Dallas Cowboys, the A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are both present. However, this is an Eagles team that needs to pick up for lost ground from a season ago. And yet you feel like with a new offense, 95% of it being new, according to Jaylen, they're further back this year than they were a year ago.
Well, I'm not going to say they're further back. It's just a matter of getting used to the scheme itself. And the biggest thing is always the verbiage. The verbiage is something, it changes. And then once you get that on the wraps, that pretty much puts everyone on the same page. And if you're Jalen Hurts, you just say, okay, well, let's look at places where this offense has been run. And you look at, more importantly, Dak Prescott. And, okay, well, how well has Dak Prescott performed over the past couple of years? I would say, with most people would probably disagree with me, that Dak has performed well. His only problem, well, he's got a couple of problems, but the biggest problem is that, listen, he plays for the Dallas Cowboys. Expectations are always high because it's Jerry Jones and it's the Cowboys. But more importantly, Dak didn't really have a lot of weapons around him. When you think about what Jalen Hurts has now, with the Philadelphia Eagles, things kind of balance out. You mentioned both Smith and Brown. Both guys are dominating wide receivers in their own right, and you always look at it this way. You look at Brown, you look at Smith. If they were on any other team, would they be number one or number two? Those are two number one guys that Jalen Hurts has, and they're learning a new offense. So it's going to take a while for them to gel, but they all learn it at the same time because they're all in OTAs. They're all in minicamp, which they all will be in training camp together as well. And then you add Saquon Barkley to that mix. I mean, it's a bevy of riches for Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles. The only thing they have to do is make sure they continue to grow and evolve with the system. And if they do, they're going to be one of the top teams in the league at the end of the year.
So tell me about Kellen Moore's offense, right? You have a little experience because there are some wrinkles that do remind me personally of Kyle Shanahan. A majority of the plays run under center, a lot of outside zone, establishing the run game, which is something that they were able to do with Zeke in the Cowboys offense. And last year, with the injuries to that Chargers offensive line, Austin Eckler injured as well, they really never got the run game going, which really affected a kind of a stunted Chargers offense even before Justin Herbert was lost for the rest of the season. So is the addition of Saquon Barkley just a natural fit for Kellen Moore's under center outside zone? What really works best, do you think, to get the most out of this offense, even if we're still installing verbiage?
Well, the whole idea is that in order to be successful in the NFL, you have to be able to run the ball. Regardless of what we've heard over the years of the devaluing of the running back position, if your running back can average 2.5 to 3 yards a clip, then don't worry about putting your quarterback under center, send him in the shotgun, right? And the problem with sitting a quarterback in the shotgun all the time, it tells the defense, guess what? Just get upfield. If they happen to hand the ball off, well, it's going to be a draw or it's going to be a dump off to the running back in the flat. Either way, it gives the defense somewhat of an advantage because they can think with that based on how the offense lines up. When your quarterback is under center, I can tell you, man, it creates problems because you don't know what they're going to do. I mean, they could pass or they could throw out of that particular formation. And knowing as though when Kellen Moore was with the Dallas Cowboys, it was all based off Zeke, their offensive line, and play action. And that was a moment in time where the Cowboys had arguably one of the better offensive line groups in the league. Philadelphia, their offensive line is not the tops in the league, but they are, I guess, hovering maybe between, maybe 5 and 8. But you take that and you mix that with skilled players, someone at tight end that can get down the field as well, and then you mix that with Saquon Barkley, which he is a threat within himself. You could dump it out to him on the flats, or he can run and he can break tackles between the tackles. That gives Kellen Moore more to do offensively. So I'm expecting to see a better Kellen Moore this year. I'm expecting to see a more effective and efficient Philadelphia Eagles offense, and I'm expecting to see a better Jalen Hurts this year.
Well, we can save it for the fantasy football content that we'll bring later. during training camp, closer to the start of the season. But I always thought that the tush push was a Jason Kelce play.
Why?
That's my hot take, because he's that center that gets the lowest leverage, that clears the running lane for Jalen Hurts to get through. Shoot, Nick, throw on some pads. I'm sure you could have run through some of those holes that Kelce was clearing out as well. Notice how I said you and not me, because I'm not putting myself in harm's way. No way, no how. Plus, I'm just too long. My 6'4" frame isn't insulated with 260 pounds of muscles like Jalen Hurts is.
Hold on, Alex. Because of your long frame, to me, that allows you to get that extra reach where a guy like me and my height, maybe I can't. I got to really.
I still have to get through the hole. I still have to get there, Nick. Yeah, I also, because of my reach, if I get knocked backwards and I have the ball in my hands, the ball is that much further behind me too. You have to keep that in mind.
But see, this is where your athleticism comes into play. You've seen those plays where quarterbacks dive over the top. Like Trevor Lawrence has become really great at it. You dive knowing this defender is going to be there, and you just shift and move the ball.
I guess I'm trying to copy his flow. So if that's the comp you have to give me, then that's the comp you have to give me. Again, we're just so early on in this process. We'll get to my hot takes about the Eagles offense and, you know, whether or not Cameron Jurgens takes over after playing right guard for them last year. There's so much time for that. But at least for now, Nick, I understand that we take these all with a grain of salt, right? We get OTA comments, whether it's from the Dolphins or the Eagles, just to cherry pick a couple more. Do you know that the Vikings were, quote, blown away with Robert Tonyan being a capable target for J.J. McCarthy so far in camp? Or how about the Chargers coaching staff believes that that Quentin Johnston plays with a lot of juice and does a lot of similar things as DK Metcalf? Again, we're way too early in the process to make these kinds of things. Oh, and Mike McCarthy saying that, Nick, before we split, I swear, I almost let this one get away. But before we split, is there issue to take with Dallas Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy saying that during his tenure with the Dallas Cowboys, there's never been a better offseason program with Dak Prescott until now? I mean, we understand they're bringing the band back together. We understand that the offseason can be great, but we know that Dak Prescott can't work out with CeeDee Lamb because they didn't resign him. We also know that he's hitting free agency at the end of this season. But Nick, before we split, what good is there? Because I can point to the bad, clearly. What good is there in Mike McCarthy pumping up Dak Prescott, congratulating him, patting him on the back for 3 or 4 days worth of work at OTAs?
Well, while most don't believe that you can learn a lot about a player and what a potential season could be, an opener for a team, and Rex Ryan has famously said, hey, his team won the offseason. Like last time I checked, no one gives out damn awards during the offseason. It's kind of like in the month of December through February that those awards are kind of given out. But I still understand what Mike McCarthy was trying to say. Basically, he was trying to say, look, I have my quarterbacks back. He has mine, because you have two guys who are on expiring deals, and the Cowboys have yet to extend either of those guys.
Correct.
So you have McCarthy, Dak, CD, and Micah Parsons. So the team is going to have to make some tough decisions. But here's the great part of what Mike McCarthy said, and what I got out of it is by saying Dak has had the best offseason he's had since he's been around. Yeah, you damn right. You know why? Because you're playing for a contract, and guys usually do well in that time period. So yes, if McCarthy says that this is the best I've seen Dak, it's a reflection on him as well. So if Dak gets paid, he gets paid.
Is that? I mean, we all know they're on their expiring deals. I think Mike McCarthy is as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. Again, a man who spent an offseason, a year off in a bunker, pretending to be a head coach, and then lying to Jerry Jones, telling him that, yes, I did watch all of Dallas's plays. I broke those down. I'm ready to go. And he said in the opening press conference, sorry, Jerry, I lied. But here we are. And those same expectations built for Dallas, for Miami, for Philadelphia. Hey, good on us for picking a handful of teams that are looking good on paper, which, again, They do hand out the Paper Champs Award, Nick, so can't wait to be giving those out later this offseason as well. He's a former 10-year NFL safety. You can follow Nick Ferguson on all social platforms at Nick Ferguson _25, breaking down film, offseason hot takes, any questions you have about your team or especially his Denver Broncos. Nick's an open book. Anything you need to know. Nick, before we get out of here and say goodbye to the people, you're an open book. Tell me why my Celtics are going to win in 4.
I would love to tell you that, but since I'm a Miami Heat fan, I really can't. Now, I'll tell you this about this particular series. I thought that Kristaps Porzingis would play an intricate role, and he did. I mean, coming into game 1, everyone thought that he would not play. It was in question, but he came in and he played well. I mean, he scored 20 points. He was a problem defensively and offensively. And I can't help but think, if you are a Mavs fan or you are a Knicks fan, that's a little thing when you watch this game. You got to be a little upset because Porzingis was in the Knicks uniform. He was in a Mavs uniform, but now he's doing this for your Boston Celtics. And if he keeps it up, he's going to be a problem for the Mavs to actually slow down.
He's Nick Ferguson. Any basketball questions, send them his way as well. I'm Alex Tardy. We are those guys. We hope to be your guys. You can find us on Ride the Wave Media, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We're coming to you a couple times a week, just trying to catch up on everything going on in the 365-day-a-year news cycle in sports, and that belongs to the National Football League. But you know well, it'll be giddy to talk about the Boston Celtics if and when they do win that NBA championship. All right, Nick Ferguson, we're out of here. What do you have to say to the people?
Just remember, life is like 365 days a year, right? There's always the moon is going to rotate. And karma, you know what they say that she is. So be kind to others so others can be kind to you.
Peace.